Okay, good evening again, everyone. My name is Amanda. I am the Regional Director for Brain Balance of Greater San Diego. We have a center in San Diego, Chula Vista, and Encinitas. And tonight I am so thrilled to have Nicole, again, the founder of Screen Time Clinic. She's here to hopefully ease your mind. I know this is a hot button issue with screen time and what's too much, how does it affect development, from littles to even adults, right? I think Nicole will probably talking about the detox, I hope. Yep, and how you can really navigate through this ongoing challenge. Technology and screens are not going to go away. So how do we live with it? How do we understand it? How do we continue to support this tool and improve, not degrade our mental health and functioning and everything in between. So again, for those that are just entering, we are recording this presentation. Please message us in the chat box. You can do that publicly or privately to myself. I will be the one moderating while Nicole presents. And if you can keep your cameras off, that would be fantastic as well. The recording, again, will be shared with you along with additional resources after this presentation. Okay, so I'm going to hand it off. Ms. Nicole, you take it over. Oh, you can't unmute. Got it. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, we have a really jam-packed presentation for you today, so I want to get to it as fast as possible. Often I give these in person. This is a picture of one of the school presentations, so I'm really glad that you took time tonight to be here live because it is the most impactful joining live. Nobody really wants to make time to rewatch webinars or to watch them if they didn't get started. But if you miss any portion of this, you will have an opportunity to rewatch it. So before we start, I just want to say that, as Amanda mentioned, screen time is a really sensitive issue. There's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about it. And I'm not here to make anyone feel guilty. It's never harder to be a parent and a teenager and just live in this culture dominated by big tech right now. But the more we know, the better we can guide our children and ourselves how to use technology safely so it's not using us. So relax and learn this evening. Challenge yourself to just singularly focus what's going on for the next hour here with this presentation and see how our focus stamina has really become eroded in the digital age with so many distractions. And before we start talking about screen time, I want to go back and look at some of these ads from long ago about things like tobacco, how it used to be marketed as good for us, sugar is the new diet drug. Gives you energy. Cocaine is good for toothaches. Coca-Cola with your breakfast had cocaine in it at one point. Ideal brain tonic water. I mean, we are in a culture of advertising, and with screen time, unfortunately, even Tide Pods have more warnings on them than iPads and iPhones and any of the apps do. So that's why we're here tonight, to really understand what is it we're dealing with, because there are no clear warnings, age verification, design regulations, or any sort of safeguards in America for digital media and devices, unlike all these other potentially harmful substances. So this is an overview of what we're going to be talking about today, and I really want to get through all of this quickly, not only because it's more engaging for you, but it's a lot of information, and I want to give you the most amount possible tonight while you're here. So Screen Time Clinic is the largest international network of certified digital wellness educators. We focus on a grassroots network of giving presentations, and everyone is really passionate about providing accurate information from unbiased sources. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, what that means, because big tech is trying to control the rhetoric also, but there's lots of studies that I'm going to reference. As for me, your speaker, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about myself either. You can look me up on LinkedIn, Nicole Rawson. I'm the founder of Screen Time Clinic. I've also written a book, Screen Smart Sam, And historically, I've been a teacher, so I feel very comfortable delivering this information and saw firsthand how it not only affected my students, but also my own children when they were growing up. They're both adults now, but I saw problems starting when my son was young. I thought baby Einstein would make him smarter. Teletubbies was a great babysitter. And then Roblox and Minecraft, he loved it, but this was the starting of the gaming addiction nightmare and started from early age. And digital addictions can last a lifetime when they start that early. So it gave me the passion to come from not a place of judgment, but a place of sharing with you how to avoid this pain as your children get older, of seeing them so wrapped up with technology and preventing them from really living their best life. So as we go along today, we want to remember that we're not anti-technology, but we are for age appropriate and really mindful use of it, especially the younger. We need to be smarter with it. So we don't want to use it as a toy. We don't want to use it as a pacifier. Think how hard it is to take binkies and blankies away. We'll talk about why technology is so hard, more difficult than those. We don't want to use it at nighttime for sleeping routines, and it shouldn't be also seen as a coming of age tool that you just hand over without careful consideration. But I'm sure everybody is wondering, how is this really possible? Because it does seem impossible, trust me. But we are going to talk about all of your questions. I received those ahead of time. Here's many that we have, not only from you, but from others that have talked to us about parenting challenges, child challenges. And I know everything that we talk about in here is going to get addressed. So stick with me. Let's jump right into the brain science about how screen time is making all these concernable symptoms that we are noticing as parents and as friends, and even in ourselves. So the biggest differentiation that we see is that there's two types of screen time. We have passive screen time, and we have interactive or immersive leisure screen time. And this is the main area that we're going to be talking about because it is so dangerous and because of the addictive design. So if we had to choose between the two, so far nobody's been addicted to online learning, schoolwork, slow-paced educational content. However, we want to be careful because there still hasn't been any proof that learning on screens provides more of a benefit than learning in person. So keep that in mind as we go through here. But the 5 main areas of concern with digital media that are contributing to this very strong behavioral addiction, which is just as serious as substance addictions, are gaming, social media, pornography addiction, and now we have compulsive spending also because of the in-app spending, the shopifying of games and easy access to shopping, and online gambling, even things like loot boxes in Minecraft and in Roblox. That is considered gambling because you're paying for something that you don't know what you're getting until you get it, and it activates that pathway in your brain. And then for adults and a lot of children on the autism spectrum, we also have information overload, that they want to constantly be scrolling and scrolling and seeking information when that's really overstimulating them. So how is this possible that this has gotten so out of control? And it really is because big tech has swooped in here telling us that this is good for our children and it's good for our society, and it makes life easier when kids are watching screens and complacent and doing, sitting in one spot, don't get me wrong. But technology design has outpaced the warnings, and the research has become shockingly clear since the pandemic brought this into the mainstream spotlight. But it's been really well studied since 2011 and even before. This book, Reset Your Child's Brain, is one of the premier books on it, which was written in 2015. And all of the research since has supported this. The problem is because in 2020, with the pandemic, we had many, many more users. And so with this explosion of users, the AI and the persuasive design has made it much more addictive. So that's why today I'm here with you sharing some new concerns, new risks that have come up in the past 3 years because of the explosion of users, that has made it much less safe for our kids. So let's
we
talk
see on
about
TikTok,
why this persuasive design is so concerning, and makes it very difficult for people to use with intention when the AI knows best what engages better than we know what we want to see.
is a bit the same that what we saw on YouTube. So basically, the algorithm is detecting that this depressing content is useful to create engagement and pushes depressing content. So the algorithm is pushing people towards more and more extreme content, so it can push them toward more and more watch time.
TikTok also says it allows you to see less of something by selecting the not interested button. But Chaslo says that's not enough.
The algorithm is able to find the piece of content that you're vulnerable to, that will make you click, that will make you watch. But it doesn't mean you really like it, and that's the content that you enjoy the most. It's just the content that's the most likely to make you stay on the platform.
So I think that's a really good point. There's a full video here if you'd like to watch it yourself or with your children. It's on our website. But the point is that you are being served, our children are being served these videos without knowing what they're being served and what they're watching, because the AI, and this is why we have privacy concerns with young people, the AI knows their preferences and what engages more than they do. So why is this such a problem for younger children? We see younger children really being captivated by screens. And this is because of their brain development that we can see here, that they are much more sensitive to visual stimulation. So even babies, when you hold up a phone, they are drawn to that because their part of their brain lights up with visual stimulation. And this is why it doesn't even take a really long time for some kids to have overstimulating effects of their neural pathways, depending on their age and depending how sensitive. But the younger, the more sensitive they are. So nobody is really immune to this before age 25. Before their brain is fully developed, those neural pathways are really busy developing. So even just 30 minutes causes blood flow to shift away from the developing frontal cortex into the fight and flight and the reward pathways. And these are not the reward pathways that we want developed long term. These are the addictive reward pathways. They are the chronic abuse and trauma pathways that causes brains to actually atrophy and be smaller and less gray matter. So even though our children are looking still and they are captivated by screens, it's actually overstimulating their reward pathway, not their critical thinking pathways. And that's a big myth that I want everybody to take note of, that, we'll talk about this more with gaming, but it's this overstimulation that is really damaging in the long term. And many youth are more sensitive to media overstimulation. So we want to look at our children's risk factors. In this book that I referenced before, Reset Your Child's Brain, it has a whole list of risk factors ranging from male gender to younger age when started, to learning disabilities, to autism spectrum disorder. Anything that is neurologically atypical, screen time actually makes more challenging and causes more symptoms and causes these behavior and learning problems that mimic autism symptoms. This is why we hear this term sometimes called virtual autism. And a lot of these symptoms can be reduced or eliminated with a screen detox of 2 weeks to 60 days. And we'll talk about that in a little bit also. But really knowing that this contributes to it and it makes it worse is mind-blowing for many parents. They have no idea. And it's a very simple thing to cut back depending on the age of your child. So similar to an allergy, we want to eliminate screen time and reintroduce cautiously, sometimes when age appropriate. So if we're already seeing concerning behaviors, over reliance, and I know everybody wants to know, well, how much is too much? And we'll get to that in the solutions. But remember, even 15 to 30 minutes creates a habit and can be overstimulating. So depending on your child, a lot depends on the concerning symptoms that we're seeing and how they're using screen time. As I mentioned before, this is really well studied. We have all of the studies on our website that you can reference after this and go look up. But you can even just put in Google Scholar here, that we have lots of different very long studies and also very large studies. However, this is important to note that big tech bias and nonprofits, even like Common Sense Media and the American Psychology Association, do not update their recommendations because they are being funded by big tech. So we want to be really cautious of some of these studies that say, oh, it's not so problematic, and we need more information to be conclusive about that. There is a tremendous amount of global information out there to support these claims that it is harmful and causes neurological damage and is a strong behavioral addiction risk the earlier exposed as children. And the other thing to consider is that many therapists are untrained about digital media overuse and behavioral addictions. So this is not just a family therapy issue, and we want to work side by side with therapists and specialists who are trained in behavioral addictions, because it is that serious when we're seeing overuse. Another area that parents are often interested in learning about is that if you're hoping to really spark that athletic or activity, which is healthy for all children, even if we're not going to be pro athletes or really gifted athletes, is that screen time takes away the drive from other activities and body movements. So it induces a withdrawal from real friendships, and it creates anxiety and sleep that impact sports, and it hinders high performance athletes, and it makes other just recreational athletes and activities not very interesting, because the dopamine from video games, Minecraft, Roblox, does not compare to the dopamine that they're getting running around in an intermittent activity outside. So we're going to dive in a little bit right here. A lot of you know about brain development. This is brain balance, and I'm sure everybody is really well researched, and you're here because you know that there's things going on in brains. But with our children, we want to remember that their executive functioning and impulse control, emotional control, and stopping cues are the last to develop. So we absolutely have to have parental intervention here. We cannot convince youngsters that this is damaging to them and still give them access if we're experiencing overuse. So because of this underdeveloped area, it leads to risky behavior. Now we're seeing online novelty seeking, where they can explore every dark inch of the internet, and unable to stop playing by themselves, temper tantrums when screens are removed, violence. And there was a question about, well, teenagers, will they grow out of it? Do the temper tantrums stop? And that's not true. Behavioral addictions, you don't grow out of. They grow stronger as they get older, and they detach and become bonded with their devices rather than with the human support system that is around them. So we see that detachment from reality really take hold as teenagers, as puberty starts to blossom. So here's another little video.
Who are victims of their own biology.
Being able to tolerate the feeling of frustration or that moment of sadness when you decide, I'm not going to continue doing this. That is crucial.
One of the reasons the children in these videos find it so hard to control themselves is because they don't yet have a fully developed prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex is a key component in the brain that's involved in helping us to control impulses and urges. When you have something like the video game being turned off suddenly, the child is faced with having to feel those negative emotions.
Another factor is dopamine, which is often referred to as the brain's pleasure chemical because it's associated with feelings of euphoria, motivation, and concentration.
Dopamine is a key component of regulating reward mechanisms in the brain. The stimulation we receive from playing a video game impacts the same pathways that are present when one is becoming intoxicated with a substance. So it's no surprise that many of the behaviors and reactions that we see for a child who's struggling with having this sudden stop brought about in their video game playing has analogs to someone who is being asked to stop usage of a substance.
Let's say a child is about to eat a piece of candy. The anticipation of eating that candy gives the child a spike of dopamine. Then their parent yanks that candy away from them. That action will cause a drop in dopamine, which will upset the child. Video game designers have gotten remarkably adept at keeping gamers entranced with a steady source of intermittent rewards. More rewards means a constant stream of dopamine released into the brain throughout gameplay. So when a parent pulls the plug on a child's video game, there's an even more powerful effect.
Video games are inherently designed to be stimulating and exciting and to draw us in. And
So again, this full video is on the website, but the intermittent design of video games is one of the most powerful addictive behavioral addictions out there. And they have gotten so good at designing Minecraft, Roblox to keep kids and into teens and adults engaged that it's very, very difficult for kids to use in moderation. And just like he was talking about, the anticipation of a popsicle or using video games, that increases dopamine too. So we are really, it's unfortunate, but kids really cannot do this themselves. They need parent intervention to help, but it has to be really methodically done to preserve your relationship. We don't want kids of course, leaving the home or destroying, constantly arguing and destroying their family bonds. But just as you wouldn't allow marijuana use or drug use in your home, you do need to take methodical intervention ways. And we'll talk about some of the best practices for that also with an integrated treatment plan. So some other problems, not just neurological problems, if that isn't enough to convince you to cut back during the young years and teenage years, they will develop technique from looking down all the time. Headaches, anxiety, and stomach problems. I want to impress upon this. This is all sympathetic nervous system overload. This brain-body connection has been very, very well researched over the years. And screen time is a big agitator of the brain. So even though we look still, our brains are being overstimulated by screen time as adults and with kids, more with kids because they're so much more sensitive. Excessive pressure on spines and lungs, and the increase in obesity rates is really a problem also with all-cause mortality from that, with more than 2 hours a day has been shown. And we're really trying to dial back. That 2-hour time limit has not been proven safe yet either. So we have the possible harm from EMF and 5G to brain tissues of youngsters because they absorb twice more than adults and their bone marrow absorbs 10 times more radiation. Also, since the pandemic, we've seen this proven eye myopia that a lot of kids are needing glasses that never did because their eyeballs are changing shape, that they are only able to see in very close distance, and they are losing their long distance sight, which is something not normal also. And that's from looking at screens, which is why even distance learning and adults with working on computers, we want to encourage lots of breaks for that. And this irreversible damage to the eyes from the blue lights, that's something that is very long-term, but we don't want to start that when they're young because that is a real big problem that we're seeing more and more too, with long-term damage to the retina. So we want to encourage you, instead of sitting your children down with an iPad, sit them down with toys, let them run around, let them run amok, and make alternative choices, because it is very clear that their brain development really flourishes when they have lots of different things to look at and are using their bodies and their minds and their brains, even though they're not quiet. That is much better for brain functioning. So the next area, because this is so prevalent, is we're going to talk a little bit more about video gaming. A lot of your questions had to do with that, which leads to the spending, and then social media, and also pornography. The two of those go hand in hand. Even though pornography used to be very taboo, it is now very, very mainstream and needs to be talked about appropriately, because there's so much access to it. So content that we're seeing, I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, is really unregulated. Even Coco Melon, PBS shows with these high graphic, high intensity, very fast paced design cartoons. These are all very overstimulating. So we need to recognize that when we're seeing an obsession with any sort of game or cartoons, that this is a sign of overstimulation. We don't want obsession. We want kids to be very widely exposed. And then we need to know that the Roblox and Minecraft, it leads to other video games. Even in Minecraft and Roblox, there are a lot of predators. There's a lot of inappropriate content. But the more graphic design games, because they're pushing them to the limit of their senses, and more explicit media engages stronger. We're seeing a lot of sexual content, violent content, and it's all unregulated. And this is why we really want to wait till age 18 to be embarking in any sort of video games, Minecraft, Roblox, anything. If it's not connected to the internet, like Donkey Kong, and some people have very old school video games, that would be okay. But again, just to kind of not even get into the habit of being infatuated with video games is best. So we want to really delay those until age 18. If you have a teenager that has already started them, we'll talk about that later, about how to dial it back, how to have those conversations and keep them safe online. Because the AI is so strong with video games, there is no safe amount of time, because it is so highly addictive that even playing a little bit, they want to come back more. Again, it's not creative play. We're not solving problems. It's simply reward pathway stimulation. They're figuring out how to get the rewards. They're not developing their critical thinking skills. And there's no real friendship qualities either. So these online friends that they have are not their support system, and they don't show, they're very conditional. They don't show any qualities of a real friend, other than easy conversational back and forth, which we all know friendship takes a lot more and a lot more thought and have real consequences to what you say. So we want to steer kids offline. We don't want to use those two excuses as a reason to continue to let them gaming, because that is really a couple of the very problematic areas that contribute to addictiveness. And the friendships are often very abusive and open themselves up for predators. Also, it's not a healthy profession. Gaming does not equal computer skills or coding. There's nothing that they're going to learn in Roblox and Minecraft that's going to give them the professional edge. If anything, this is going to be a new screening for at-risk employees, that they're not able to focus on their work and they're not excelling in college. We've seen that already. And in sports, that it's a huge risk factor because it is so singularly focused. So that is another rhetoric of big tech, that we want to have coding and friendships and it's creative and creationism, but all of that has really been proven not to be the case. Hooked on Games is a great book by Dr. Doan that talks about all of this. early gaming, this is why we don't want to encourage Roblox and Minecraft. And no, not every kid is doing it. And no, your kid won't lose out if you don't allow it. But the earlier gaming is a greater risk for depression, anxiety, and aggression. And it's more addictive with the earlier age exposure. We also see premature puberty from the excessive stress that they are experiencing online. It also changes in-person dynamics and family interactions and influences their friend selection. So even though in teenage years we're not seeing temper tantrums, we're really seeing concerning ways that children are developing in a very small bubble with very low interpersonal skills. And screens are not only involved, video games are not only involved with dopamine, they are also producing oxytocin. So our kids are falling in love with their video games rather than their parents, rather than their siblings, rather than their support system around them, having a really full network of real people and real things that they're caring about. The gaming creates a lower desire to learn new things and creates a block to imagination and creativity because everything they're thinking about is referencing video games, Minecraft, Roblox, or whatever they're obsessed with online. Everything is in reference to that. So it really narrows down their ability to think big and deeply and to be able to self-regulate. And of course, this peer pressure to start too young. We've talked a lot about Minecraft and Roblox. So
A few
here's
decades.
a little insight about why this is such a big problem with video games, because it's such a huge industry. Let's look for 30 seconds here.
Forward to current times. Gaming is not simple shapes on the screen that require you to use your imagination anymore. It's more than a $200 billion industry that just keeps on growing. In fact, the gaming industry is now bigger than the film and music industries combined. Gaming is more popular than ever, but it's not about just playing video games as much as video games are playing you. The problem that I talked about in the beginning is the area of your brain responsible for your focus and attention. That's why the gaming industry is booming. Video game companies don't compete for just who makes a better game. They compete for who gets and keeps your attention the longest, and then who monetizes it the best. Gaming teams are full of behavioral psychologists studying human behavior and optimizing their products for their own gain. It reminds us of a time in the 60s when Big Tobacco testified that cigarettes were not addictive, while at the very same time attempting to maximize the amount of nicotine in cigarettes. For Big Tobacco, it was nicotine. For big gaming, it's dopamine.
So this is from gamequitters.com. If you have a video gamer in your home right now and you're concerned specifically about video gaming, they are a great resource for that. The overall for video games is that it really erodes family values, the gamer's self-worth, their faith, and it impedes therapeutic interventions. So whether it's tutoring, time at Brain Balance, it's total it makes a backstep and you're really not getting the full impact of all the other things that you're trying to do to help your child if the gaming continues. So moving on, I know we're getting short on time here, but we do want to talk about social media and explicit images because social media has been linked to serious mental health issues, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other health issues that are behavioral disorders for children, teens, and even adults. So the areas that impact social media are self-objectification, constant self-comparison, and self-commodification, using yourself as a commodity. Plus, it has constant distractions. It's got the intermittent rewards built into it. So Snapchat and TikTok, Instagram, they're all built to keep you coming back. And it is a haven for predators, bullies, and scams since 2020. because of all of the users. They've really gotten good at targeting children. Sexual, violent, and depressing content engages the most. So we want to really delay social media and gaming until 18 because there are absolutely no safeguards online. And it doesn't matter what parental control settings you have on them, kids know how to circumvent them, and it doesn't keep them safe. That's just big tech's way of covering themselves, saying, well, we put parental controls in, it's not our fault if they're not being used properly or if they're being circumvented, and they're putting the onerous on parents, which is really not fair. Sexting has become so regular. This is why pornography is such a huge issue via social media, because of these disappearing images, which don't actually disappear, and the sexual content that they're served up when they're not even intending to see it. So we have Snapchat's new AI chatbot is really concerning also. That's another reason not to allow social media, because it's exposing them to unproven advice and people that are not there that really care about them. Teenagers are especially at risk. Students who check social media more regularly displayed greater neutral sensitivity in certain parts of their brains, making their brains more sensitive to social consequences. So it's really dumbing them down and causing long-term effects when you're using social media on a regular basis. And then we also have the concern with TikTok, because it knows all their keystrokes, all their content on their phone and your phone if you have it. TikTok is one of the most egregious privacy violators, and they are a Chinese-based company, so they have no accountability in the United States, except if the platforms are banned, because they will not change their design, but they have access to everything on your phone, which makes it easier for them to learn about your children, to learn about you, and serve you up content that is more addictive to keep you there longer, to monetize their platform. So this is interesting that the largest group of internet porn consumers is actually children aged 12 to 17. Child sexual abuse material is rampant on the internet, and it is very, very engaging to young minds. It is very neurologically overstimulating. So these aren't just pictures of a naked body that everyone's naked. They're going to see naked people sometime. What's the difference? This is really for children. Images that are sexually explicit or nude change their brain physiologically. So it's accessed through all apps and computers, video games, social media platforms. It is extremely easy for kids to access. OnlyFans is popular with teens, and that's a amateur porn site, because they really don't have good control over age verification. There's no identity verification, so you cannot go back and see who is causing the harm. There's no content moderation that's really effective. And pornography, like Billie Eilish pointed out, it impacts females greatly too. So this next video, it's talking about young boys, but now with everybody watching it, it impacts girls. Any gender identity is not immune.
There's pretty good documentation that the earlier someone is exposed to really explicit pornography and sexual imagery, the more likely it is that they're going to have compulsive and addictive problems around their sexuality as an adult. Because that 9-year-old does not have the emotional and biological development to be able to really understand what the meaning is. He knows it's incredibly arousing and amazing and distracting and fun, and it feels good to look at, but their brains are really not ready to handle it.
Our sexuality is wired into us. The most sexual organ is between our ears, not between our legs. So when you are developing your brain sexually, what happens is that pornography begins building that script. This is the way we're supposed to think about it. And so when a young person views pornographic material, they're neurologically now starting to put bricks in this wall of kind of building the structure of what sex means.
Adolescent brain is not an adult brain with less experience. It is in a unique place. It is anatomically, physiologically, and biologically different. And what occurs during adolescence is several brain changes that have a purpose. And the purpose is to become very excited about sensation seeking, about rewards, about sex. And it's to become wired up, actually changing the structure of the brain to wire up to the environment. And it has been shown to occur with nerve connections. The way nerves connect and intertwine is really the basis for all learning and all memory. So what occurs is around age 11, the adolescent brain prunes down these connections until you're set with the connections that will perhaps last a lifetime.
Pornography is a teacher and modeler of sexual templates, particularly when they're modeled early, because it's a powerful neuroplasticity device. Neuroplasticity means that our brain changes, and we change when we want and when we learn. And we have seen it in pornography now. People who are watching pornography compulsively, their brains look different from those that are not.
And that's same with video game
A
playing.
leading researcher said recently to me, we're in the midst of the single largest unregulated social experiment in human history. And what he was talking about was the inundation of the brains of young children with content that they're not prepared to deal with.
So that video again is on our website, screentimeclinic.com/resources. I really encourage everybody to watch the full-length movie. And really, there's so much online bullying and safety risks since the pandemic. This is new information that not a lot of people are very aware of, but it is information that you are empowered with to make different choices and to maybe backstep what you have been doing and to really rethink how you're approaching gaming and social media and access to even YouTube and scrolling. So trust does not apply online to your children and their activities. You cannot teach trust online because you don't know who's on the other side and the algorithms that you're fighting. Bullying affects mental health. Apps make it easy to be anonymous and say things without real consequences. And it's really hard for parents to monitor if you don't have the right tools. So this is almost 100,000 not under investigation of minors exploited online, IP addresses, sharing known CSAM, which is pornography to minors. It's a really serious issue. And I hope you guys will make more time. All of these issues that we're talking about tonight have their own presentation and their own much more information about this, but hopefully it gives you, this is our website, the /resources, and all of these videos that you can find out more. And I want you to be really certain that little steps and big steps really do make a big difference. And teenagers can say no, and they are, a lot of them, leaders of change. So we want to really empower parents with that. So our last 10 minutes, we do have some solutions that I'm going to go really briefly through to wrap us up and get us to that 1 hour mark. I'm just going to go through them real quickly because every child is different, but, and I encourage everyone to schedule a one-on-one initial consult with me if you really want to pick my brain about your specific situation. But this question, how much is too much? If there's an obsession of any kind with any sort of character, it's narrowing their focus and it's creating a behavior addiction. Over attachment, they want more and more time online. If you're seeing school struggles, if there's a lack of focus, quiet time, reflection, or loss of faith going on, this can also be caused by screen time. Of course, aggression, defiance, these are very, very close and causal of screen time. So we want to dial that back. Feeling depressed or sick, tired, late for school, avoiding exercise, any of these things, we really want to empower parents to make big changes. This 369 framework, not even exposing kids to video games or media before age 12 is really a good idea. We have this online if you'd like to pause this, rewatch it, some great guidelines. And a few tips before we wrap up is don't remove devices at random times. Don't go after this presentation and pull out all the cords and try to do everything all at once. You have to be very thoughtful and very structured about it. Don't use screen time as a reward because it's an addictive substance. Even a little bit, they want more and more and more. And it shouldn't be paired with something like reading because it'll make them hate reading if they have to do it to get screen time. If you see symptoms of overuse, take action, get help. Don't yell or give random consequences. It's really unfair to kids because they don't know how it's impacting them, and they've been allowed to have this without us as adults knowing. Don't allow in bedrooms and cars and bathrooms. Don't believe coding is educational. We talked about that. And don't allow spending in games. That's one great way to stop and just say, oh, the credit cards don't work. No more spending if you have that happening already. And then don't encourage daily time. So we want to move away from 2 hours a day, 1 hour a day, and we want to get things out of routine so we don't have this behavioral addiction. Blaming parents or the users is not the answer. We really need more government intervention. And until that happens, we need 18 plus to try to wait for everyone until there's user verification and identity verification to keep these platforms safe for kids. You can go back to old school. Setting up bedtimes is one of the biggest ways that we see able to dial back time, is getting a good night's sleep and really reducing the bedtime. Teach reading and meditation. No TVs in the morning is a great way to really keep their brains alert and sharp and curious. We want to be curious. Go to school well rested and on time. We have a lot of smart swaps. If you have littles, we're happy to talk to you about what is better. We're not totally anti-technology, but there is a lot of real good guidance, and you can download that on our website. And then finally, we want to make a solutions-based family wellness plan, a media plan to control tech before it controls you, and really dial back to what is important to your family and how this is playing into really raising well-adjusted kids. And to set clear expectations, use technology as a privilege, talk about what's illegal and unethical. We have all of these templates for you to use online, and we can also do one-on-one consultations also. Consider daily allowances. TikTok, we talked about what a big risk that are. And this is the detox part. If you need to make a tech reset plan, absolutely do it. Tech detoxes are a great way, whether you can do it as a parent yourself, or you can have us help or a therapist help. It's a great way to really take a break during the summer, take 2 weeks break, take 1 week break. It's not as difficult as you would think, and you'll have big benefits from that. Track and plan activities and assist your kids in scheduling. We really have to get back to making a plan for them because it's just so easy to divert to screens if they're allowed. Some tools, I know we have about 8 minutes left. Some tools that we want to use so parents don't lose their mind is that we really want to get away from iPhones and iWatches and use these safe alternative devices. If you need GPS tracking on your child, there's an easy way to do that with some of these alternative devices from Gab and Pinwheel. The Cosmos smartwatch has GPS tracking and basic texting without getting into all of the rabbit holes that iPhones are easily hacked. And even though they seem easier to manage, just handing over an iPhone and gifting that, they are really a lot more difficult to manage for parents than these devices that are out there. Monitoring apps, unfortunately, it is a lot on parents to monitor if you do choose to allow it. But many parents choose not to allow a lot of this stuff because it's so difficult to monitor nowadays. But Our Pact and bark.us are great ones. And then we do provide tech detox plans and to detox at home from screens. And we can also help with a harm reduction plan at school, because screen time is linked to increased odds of children developing OCD and other neurological dysfunctions. So we want to have time that you can get them down to a baseline neurological functioning without screen overuse. And this is a way that we can do it with everyone involved, and parents aren't on their own. Model good intentional use and increase your tolerance to chaos. Coming of age, kids are messy. They should be loud and messy and working on their self-regulation. Use boxes to put technology away and out of sight. And don't be afraid to backstep and correct if you're having problems with plans. We are here to help. There's even services like Take It Down if you have teenagers struggling with nudes online that they're regretting later. There's even a new coalition that's helping with that. And at school, we have a whole program about schools and screen time, but we really want to encourage you to put phones away at school. Don't text your child during school. It adds stress. Just let them focus with the teachers and hopefully keep phones out of the classroom. But overall, stick to the plan. You're the parent and you know best now that you know all this information. It's absolutely essential to guide and educate, but don't wait and don't expect to convince your kids. I think that's a big one. This is your information to be empowered with, to guide them, but convincing and constantly arguing with them rather than structurally setting them up for success is the way that you're going to win this long-term challenge that they have in the digital age. And keep making a plan to preserve your relationships. We really want to protect them from digital addictions, but also be loving and kind and help them be these teenage leaders of the future that we see. So with that, I'm going to conclude and go back to this, that we're not anti-tech, just age-appropriate mindful use, and pick one way. Start with one thing while you digest this all. Maybe just make a new early bedtime for technology, starting with ourselves. I mean, it's great everybody is here. There's so much online that you guys can find to support you. And of course, you can find me online also and schedule a free one-on-one tech checkup and download a lot of these printables, and the media guide and all the resources are there. So woo, we did it. 4 minutes left for questions that I didn't answer, but I think I really covered a lot of them.
First of all, can everyone give her a big round of applause? I've been having messages saying, oh, this is fantastic. I know. I couldn't even take my notes because I was kind of like busy trying to moderate and like I'm trying to sum things up. I'm like, I can't. But thankfully this is recorded, and so I'm very much looking forward to reviewing this later and actually digesting it as a participant and sharing this with my families who have were unable to attend tonight. But for everyone else that came, again, thank you. We have a mix of parents and professionals and guardians, I'm sure. I did, by the way, private message quite a few of you. If you can please respond back with the name and or email that you registered in so I can take attendance, that would be great. Both myself and Nicole will be following up with everyone, again, with the link to this recording, with additional resources. And I do want to give you all a chance to ask any questions if you have any, but so far comments are saying, thank you, no questions. You answered a lot of the questions in the registration, so I knew, that was good. But yeah, let's give it a minute so people have time to digest and process, and go ahead and type in your questions in the chat box, please.
Good, thank you. And it's nice having all those questions in advance. And I know it's a lot of information, but I feel like to give you guys all of it in a really short amount of time, that it will spark some sort of interest and really help you take that deeper dive.
And if you don't have questions, I would love to see what everyone will do. Just again, that one thing, what's one thing you will change, or what's an aha for you? I love asking at the end of my presentations as well, because this is what gives both Nicole and myself that feedback of this is what people want to know. This is what they don't know that they're taking away. So if you don't have any questions, I would love all the engagement, again, public or private. What's one thing you will do that's different from today, or an aha? So I do have a question from Natalie. Said, when you recommend not setting a routine or hours for screen time, what are your suggestions then?
You can do it maybe like on like surprise them, like a Saturday morning. Okay, we're gonna watch this show together, or okay, you can go do a little bit here or there. Again, with the gaming and social media, it's really a Pandora's box. So, but if you dial that time really back and say, you know, we're just gonna do your Minecraft for an hour on Saturday at noon. We don't want them waking up early. We don't want them going to bed early. But if you can just sprinkle in a little bit of time, it might make it less so they're not as good at it and they're not as interested in it, because they're not seeing that intermittent reward success that they would be if they're playing regularly. So that's kind of a sneaky way to dial it back and, you know, say like, oh, the internet's not working today. And, you know, we do see kids, if they are addicted, we don't want to put anyone in a dangerous position too. So a digital detox for some kids that are highly addicted is very dangerous, just as doing a chemical detox on your own would be. So we don't want anyone unplugging a video game of a 17-year-old that's been gaming since he's 6, because we've seen in the news many times that they are so strongly bonded to that game, they will take revenge on the people that love them the most. So let's prevent that from happening. But if that is your child, again, the gamequitters.com is a great resource. And all these books, I mean, and I'm here to help, and everybody on our team also, if you find someone else that speaks to you on our website.
Let's do one more question / advice. What about when kiddos go to a friend's house where screen time is not monitored, restricted, etc.? Like, what do you do?
So usually that kind of resolves itself if you are not permitting, let's say, game playing at your house, and then you're sending a child over to play to another child's house that is playing video games. It's a really not safe situation, because we've heard of a lot. There's a book that one of my colleagues wrote that happened during a sleepover, that there's predators, that they get a taste for this. That's actually when pornography is a lot of times exposed during, these play dates where they're not supervised. So I would talk to parents and say, hey, we're a screen light family. I just wanted to make sure that if we're having a play date, like, what can I expect the kids to be doing, and what time will they be going to bed? Or just don't allow these overnight.
That's wild. From last night.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's more dangerous than it was years ago, and even 3 years ago, because the predators are just so prolific and sophisticated online now, that just one little dabble gets kids hooked, and can really be traumatizing, that lasts them years to undo.
Oh yeah, I've heard those stories at Brain Balance here in San Diego. And then I love that you said, hey, check in with the families, right, that you're setting this play date up with, because setting expectations is really important, not just with screen time, but like you said, what are they going to be doing? Are they going to be supervised? And also nutrition. Nutrition is part of our program in Brain Balance, and what you feed the body and brain really matters. And so you know, regardless if they have an allergy or not, you have these family values. So it's, I think, totally fair to ask that they respect that as well. Or what I have other families do is set up the play dates at their house where it is more
Yes.
controlled and monitored, right? So there's some
Yep.
options.
And a lot of times the kids love doing different games and playing regular board games and doing all these, you know, old school quote unquote
I love
games that
those games.
we
Yeah.
play that they just crave it and love it. So don't be afraid to be the different parent and structure things differently and really and mix things up.
Yeah. All right. So I don't want to keep everyone up. I do want to share some of those ahas of what they'll do differently really quick. So early bedtime for technology, even the adults here are saying, okay, I have to put my phone down, which is true. You have to model those good behaviors. It affects your brain as well. I was just talking to a senior last week. I do presentations in the community as well. And they were saying how their own son, this is a senior speaking here, their own son was saying, Mom, you need to go to bed. And she's like, ah, my age, it doesn't matter. And she learned, oh, it does. It matters how much you sleep, what screen time's doing to your brain as well. So she's like, okay, I'll listen to her own young son.
Yep.
And then being more mindful in general, right? When you put all that away and just wanting resources to help with the parents who are using technology to babysit or pacify their kiddos. And yeah, seeing parents work together. So yeah, that's awesome. So I'll be sure to share Nicole's contact information with everyone. I've been putting her website on the chat box quite a bit. So if you have any questions, feel free to message us at Brain Balance, but I'll make sure everything gets to Nicole and you'll have her direct information as well. So have a good night, everyone. I appreciate everyone having that
Kudos for
commitment,
attending.
right? Commitment, right? To learn more for yourself and for your family and for your community and for the other folks that you work with too. So yes, thank you and good night.
Thanks, everybody.